It's a horror game, right? So we're gonna scare players, of course, but it's also a Chinese room horror game where we don't only want to scare players, we want to also invoke other types of feelings.
A big part, especially in this game, of the role of the sound designer is to support storytelling, and especially in a game as atmospheric as Still Wakes the Deep is. And we always walk that fine line between trying to make something sound realistic, but also trying to make it sound evocative of something else, of a threat, of a possible threat.
So from the first conversations, really, it was all about, yes, the oil rig is a metal structure, but we think of it as a living thing. It's not a static metal structure, right? And so through sound, we've always explored it that way. Like, it's almost like being in the belly of the beast, as cliche as that sounds. There is a chaotic event that happens. We thought it would be interesting to establish over time a sense of order in the sound design. You might have seen how fireflies sometimes are just blinking and randomly, but ultimately find a way of blinking in sync. Or if you're in an audience and people are clapping, it's just chaos. But if people keep clapping for long enough, they might just start going into a sync. It's just sort of inherent, this idea of synchronicities.
We basically have a clock. According to this clock, we can synchronize all kinds of different events, and they can be audio events or they can be some animations, visual effects. What we're trying to achieve is not something that is obvious, not something where you can understand exactly our intent, but something that the players would perceive without paying attention too much to it. It's not just stuff that plays every 5 to 10 seconds, which is something that historically is very frequent to do in game audio.
As maybe part of the rig is getting unstable, it also affects our immediate surroundings.
Loud sounds that maybe happen in the distance. All of the metal surfaces around the player resonate in sympathy and according to the loudness envelope of the sound that generated them. One of the things that I think are most special at the Chinese room is how different departments manage to collaborate. When we decide to play some wind gust sounds, we inform code through a loudness value. We give code the value of loudness of the wind intensity, and when it goes above a certain threshold, what happens is that the player starts to stagger a bit, and they will lift their arm to protect themselves from the wind. Same thing for haptics and controller rumble. Camera shakes and rumble are synchronized.
Fran, you have recorded all sorts of props, like because of course this is a 1970s game, so maybe you want to talk about some of the props you recorded.
Yeah, like one of my favorite sounds to make is like the little interaction sounds, or small props that the player can pick up and interact with. One of the interactions that you have to do a few times in the game is open a vent with a screwdriver. That's the radiator in my old apartment.
You know, maybe this sounds like okay, yeah, so you're opening a vent, but that's one of the most satisfying sounds in the whole game. I also remember you ordered some phones off eBay to get that sort of old phone ring recording. There's a lot of metal railings in the game that you walk on, being an oil rig. Just sort of grab a ladder and start smacking it on the floor, so you get nice rattly kind of sounds.
Wind, water, they're some of the hardest sounds to get right.
Water and wind inherently are white noisy, which means they're just like a wash of noise that isn't very defined. So you need to do a lot of crafting to make it sound, for instance with wind, to make it sound powerful.
When you have such powerful sounds that take all of the frequency spectrum, it's really hard for the player to hear anything else, to hear the footstep, to hear the breathing, the dialogue, for example, which is crucial to understand the story, to hear the music.
Somebody! Oh, Christ!
So it's constantly a game of understanding what is the most important sound you need to hear at this specific point in the scene, and emphasizing that and carving out everything else.
Water is one of the main dangers in this game. Therefore, we need to do quite a lot of design to these water sounds to make it sound dangerous. So we try to add a lot of different kinds of sound, a lot of more bassy, gurgling, deeper sounds to kind of represent this sense of danger of coming towards you. It's often not about the literal sound, it being water. It's more about how that water or that wind is supposed to make you feel, and then what kind of other sounds can we bring in to realize that.
The code team thankfully provided us with some tools we can use to understand how fast the water is rising, for example, among other parameters, how deep the water is, how fast it is rising. And so we can use those parameters in real time to understand how the water should sound like.
An audio director or an audio lead would be creating a lot of concepts or sort of like initial sketches of things, like this is how we think we should go. Of course, a lot of that will change throughout the project. And then fast forward to the end of a project where we're basically now, this role becomes more about making sure that we can close the project, that we know like where the finish line is, which is because if we are left to our own devices, we will go forever.
We don't want the players to only focus on sound or to only listen to the sound. What we want to do is to make an audio experience that matches the visual experience and complements them. So as long as you enjoy the game, we're very happy.